Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again, and oh boy, have we got a weird one. I think we've seen enough of Luke Cage, Power Man, to have a grasp on him, so let's talk about Iron Fist. So from what I've read, martial arts heroes were becoming a thing in the mid-70s, and it was really becoming popular at Marvel. While they had Shang-Chi, who we briefly mentioned back in the Romtrospective, he wasn't really a superhero in the same way. No secret identity, no costume, unless you call his gi a costume, and not really engaged in superheroics, although certainly fighting supervillainy, in the same way other characters were at the time. Iron Fist, however, fully embraced the superhero stuff. Mask and costume, secret identity, plus actual superpowers. The inspiration for him apparently came about from two rather different sources. The first being a Golden Age superhero called Amazing Man, who apparently had similar backstory elements, while another was apparently a kung fu movie that Roy Thomas had just seen. According to him, it was a movie that predated Bruce Lee and contained a Ceremony of the Iron Fist, which he thought would make for a good character name. My Google foo has failed me, and thus I've been unable to find out what that movie was, but there you go. Iron Fist himself is a guy named Danny Rand, whose father discovered a mystical city called Kunlun, or Kunlun, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, and saved the life of the city's ruler. Danny's parents are killed on a second expedition to the city, and the grieving Danny was brought back to Kunlun and trained in martial arts, eventually going through a ritual battle to acquire the power of the Iron Fist, and getting himself a nice big dragon tattoo burned into his chest. The boy with the dragon tattoo turned out to be a very different sort of story than the girl with one. Unfortunately, the character's solo book wasn't able to sustain itself after 15 issues, and it was cancelled. However, to rescue the character, while also help the fledgling sales of Luke Cage's book, the two were partnered together and have basically been besties ever since. Hell, remember a few months ago when I talked about Luke Cage joining up with the Punisher when he became a black guy? Just to remind you that that comic was indeed real. Well, apparently the main reason Cage was in Chicago and kind of being more bleak and faux serious was because Iron Fist had been murdered. He got better, remember comics. This partnership was actually pretty damn brilliant. You've got street-smart, downtrodden, take-no-crap Luke Cage partnered with martial arts-trained, meditative, mystical Iron Fist. And what's even more funny is that it's mixing two film trends together that had already been working together. Luke Cage was created in connection with blaxploitation films becoming a thing, and Iron Fist as a result of kung fu movies becoming a thing, and theaters at the time that showed blaxploitation films were also showing kung fu films, and both were a big hit with their audiences. Hell, Todd in the Shadows talked about this a bit in his One Hit Wonderland episode on kung fu fighting. And thus we get to this comic, which adds in something else that was a little bit silly and a little bit awesome from the 70s, but we'll get to that. For now, let's dig into Power Man and Iron Fist number 79.
Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
The cover, despite being pretty action-packed, still seems a little iffy due to the lack of a background. And yet here we've got Luke Cage punching a robot's head off, another robot shooting a laser beam, and Iron Fist kicking another robot. Although being less effective than Luke Cage's punching. But yeah, it looks awesome, but it feels slightly off. And you thought it would never come. The day of the Dreadlocks! No one was prepared for the day the hairdressers rose up. We open with our main characters looking at one of the titular Dreadlocks, and there is, of course, a quick explanation of the series' premise. Luke Cage, a child of the streets. And, I'm sure there was some other important information about him, too. Daniel Rand, a son of the mystic city of Kunlun. Still waiting on last month's child support payment from them. Two men from different worlds, both reborn with strength and power beyond belief. And together, no one can stop them. Although sales numbers do a pretty good job of slowing them down. The two are looking at one of the Dreadlocks, which has such a reflective surface that we can see their faces in it. Incredible, isn't it, Fist? He's not talking to Iron Fist. Luke Cage just talks to his hand sometimes when preparing to punch things. Gazing at the metallic surface of the robot in front of them, Power Man and Iron Fist, the heroes for hire, find it hard to accept what they see. A remote-controlled robot made out of metal, having all of these features, and it's only $20? That can't be right! It's revealed the Day of the Dreadlocks is actually a Broadway play, and the two heroes are behind stage, looking at the props. And when the play's over and you look at them up close, you can see them for the flimsy, hollow hunks of junk they really are. Well, then I'm really confused about why Iron Fist was having so much trouble on the cover. Does all the muscle power in his foot transfer to his hand or something? They're quickly met by Robert Diamond, the star of the show, and also from a previous Kung Fu-themed comic, and some woman who I don't know, but is probably a supporting character in the series or something. Hardly junk, Luke, let's be fair. The Day of the Dreadlocks has the most sophisticated special effects currently on Broadway, and still less injuries than Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. The robots are radio-controlled, with special light and sound effects for their death rays. Special light and sound effects? Huh! Truly, they have spared no expense for this Broadway play. Robert plays the star of the whole thing, Professor J.A. Gamble, and invites the two heroes to join him for the after-party as soon as he changes out of costume. But we are still in our costumes. If we have to dress like this, you have to dress like this. Yeah, we don't usually socialize in our working clothes. Then why did you wear them to Broadway tonight? Also, oh hi, Venjix. So that's where you ended up. However, apparently there's only one crew member on Broadway since this janitor guy starts thinking how unfair it is that he has to do all the work while Diamond gets all the glory. However, there's a flash of red, a scream, and then he's gone. He's right though, janitors get no respect. They clean up everybody else's crap, they work long hours, and get no thanks for it. You treat janitors with respect, people. Plus, if you don't, they'll torment you for 8 years while inventing new and interesting devices.
Knife wrench!
So the next morning, it appears that Luke is living out of a 42nd Street theater since he was woken up by the projector starting. Whoops. Then we have an interlude where we see Robert Diamond getting trained by Danny, apparently as part of his recovery exercises from being stabbed in the stomach. Because truly, there is no better physical therapy for stomach wounds than martial arts. I mean, I don't doubt that it could be used in that capacity, but it's just like, hey, you just got stabbed, do some high kicks. Diamond is apparently distracted because of some stuff on his mind, which he explains later to the heroes for hire. Weird things have been happening at the theater lately. People vanishing, props being destroyed after hours, angry janitors plotting revenge schemes, and he'd like to hire them to find out who's responsible. Luke doesn't buy it, thinking it's all a big publicity stunt, but not only does Danny vouch for him, but their secretary reminds Luke that Diamond's a paying customer either way, and money's a little tight right now. And not an incorrect statement, since Luke Cage has to wash his yellow shirt in the theater's break room. They head over to the Broadway theater to begin the investigation, but the investigation soon finds them, as laser beams shoot out and almost hit them. Diamond is knocked out from his fall, while our heroes realize that the regular pedestrians are also under attack. Iron Fist works on getting them to safety, while Luke Cage grabs a car door to use as a shield, trying to get to the sniper that they think is launching the attack. However, when he reaches the alley that was the source of the beams, there's nothing there. There's no one here, and no sign that anyone ever was here. But this is a New York alleyway. Someone must have urinated in it at some point. Later, after Luke apologizes to Diamond about not believing his story, we cut over to the apartment of Misty Knight, private investigator and future hero for hire herself. She's making out with Danny, But uh-oh, wacky sitcom hijinks abound as Luke Cage arrives home with his date Harmony Young. He can't make out with her at the theater, so he wants to use this place. Really? Because I'm pretty sure that wasn't uncommon in 42nd Street theaters, dude. Harmony suggests they all stay and have some fun, deciding to put on a little mood music, which is apparently a record called Macho Man. Could be the Village People, or it could be that album Macho Man Randy Savage put out. Either way, I'm not really seeing that as mood music. But before anything else can happen, they got a phone call from Diamond, who's calling for help since something is happening at the theater. Luke and Danny run off. We can change our clothes in the cab. It's rare that you read a superhero comic where the hero discusses his need for a taxi, or that he'll be changing clothes in said taxi. What are they going to do with their civilian clothes? At the theater, the place has been torn apart and there's nobody around. However, one thing they do spot is one of the Dreadlocks. Luke, one of those prop robots. It's Christmas! That actually sounds like a good song for a comedy band. Robot Christmas. But yeah, the Dreadlocks attack, shooting very powerful laser beams that can melt steel. Okay, I take it back. Clearly, these are the most sophisticated special effects ever used in a Broadway show. Humans, you are surrounded! You must come out! If you do not, you will be incinerated! Aren't we just going to incinerate them anyway? Shut up, Larry! They're not supposed to know that! Finding some empty prop robots, the two wheel them out, kneeling behind the props just long enough to get in close to the lead Dreadlock.
Surprise, motherfucker.
The human is escaping! Follow him! Incinerate! Incinerate! Oh, so now we're letting them know that? Damn it, Larry! This is why you never get a promotion! The two make a hasty retreat away from the Dreadlocks, trying to find a place to hide. That bookshop is open! Let's duck in there! Good! Let's put more innocent civilians in danger. And when the two duck inside, they find this guy, who offers them some tea. However, they're more confused by how the bookstore didn't look this spacious from the outside. Well, don't go telling me the place is bigger inside than it is out. Yeah, if you haven't figured it out yet, this comic is a crossover with Doctor Who. Sort of. Dreadlocks instead of Daleks, and Professor Justin Alphonse Gamble instead of the Doctor. Also, make him dress like Willy Wonka instead of a big scarf. Although I should note that at the time of this comic, Peter Davison was in the middle of his first year, so I don't know if this was meant as some kind of tribute to the Fourth Doctor, or just because the writer, Mary Jo Duffy, wanted a tribute to Doctor Who in a book she was making in general. Hell, she apparently worked on US reprints of Doctor Who magazine back in 1980, since Marvel UK owned the license to it at the time. What's really funny to me, though, is that Doctor Who is already technically part of the Marvel Universe. And I don't just mean with the Marvel UK stuff, I mean we've got a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing here. A character named Death's Head was also printed by Marvel UK and encountered the Seventh Doctor. He was even shrunk down to a human size thanks to the Master's tissue compression eliminator. In fact, Death's Head was dropped off on top of the Baxter Building by the Doctor, where he then encountered the Fantastic Four. And Death's Head, in turn, has appeared several times in the mainstream Marvel Universe and has had his own book several times. Hell, you want to know the even weirder connections when it comes to Death's Head? The dude was initially created for the UK's Transformers comics, but they loved the character concept so much they didn't want Hasbro to own the rights to him, so they had him appear in a different book first so they could own him. So yeah, this guy has connections to Transformers too. The only way the copyright issues with Death's Head could be any weirder is if he was actually best friends with Rom. So yeah, the point is, apparently there's some other eccentric Time Lord dressed like Willy Wonka fighting Dalek-like beings running around the Marvel Universe. Professor Gamble explains that he wrote the Day of the Dreadlocks play based on his own life since he needed cash. Okay, I call bullcrap on that part. You're a time traveler! Lotto numbers! And yes, he does admit to being a time traveler, especially since the play inadvertently gave the Dreadlocks a place to hide, and they themselves have mastered time travel. Luke Cage spots Diamond and the other people from the theater being carried off by the Dreadlocks. But what do they want with Diamond? It's really quite simple. The Dreadlocks think your friend is me. They have no idea how much I've changed in the last 95 years.
You know how it is.
You put things off for a day, next thing you know, it's 100 years later.
Luke Cage has had enough of all this weirdness and just wants to go smash some robots. Splendid, splendid! I intend to attack them myself as soon as I finish building my temporal polarization destabilizer.
I rigged something like it on Spiridon.
His device should be able to send them back to their own time period. That is, I could, if only I could find some way of sneaking into their headquarters. Prof, your troubles are over. When it comes to sneaking, Fist here is the best there is. Yes, the guy in a big bright yellow and green costume is truly the master of stealth. The two agree to wait for him to finish up his device, and Luke Cage even sits down to have some tea. With his pinky outstretched and everything. This comic is kind of weird. At the Dreadlocks base, they of course want Diamond to help them with their time travel pad, threatening to incinerate the others if he doesn't comply. Outside, the attack is underway, with Iron Fist sneaking up on the guards. Fist is a master of something called ninjutsu, the art of invisibility. Oh yes, aren't there some turtles in New York who know something about that? Look man, the connections to other franchises are complicated enough in this. Let's not try to make it any worse. And thanks to his ninja training, Iron Fist uses his, Iron Fist to smash a hole in the building. The best kind of sneaking is the kind where you just punch a hole in the wall. And thus the battle begins, with Luke Cage punching not Daleks while Iron Fist picks one up and starts swinging it around. What's funny is that I'm pretty sure Frankenstein did that once on Doctor Who too. Hell, they even strategized during the fight, realizing that the Dreadlocks need a few seconds to recharge between blasts, so they target the ones who have already fired. You are outnumbered! You are inferior! You cannot hope to defeat us! Ooh, a very bad thing to say to Luke Cage, dudes. I think we need some appropriate fight music for this. Anyway, Professor Gamble manages to hook up the machine to the Dreadlocks' time platform, sending them all back to their own time. The two thank Gamble for his help, right when Diamond returns with the police. However, not only is everything gone by this point, but Gamble and his TARDIS have vanished too. And so our comic ends with Luke telling Diamond that he shouldn't have to explain it. After all, it was your publicity stunt, wasn't it? That janitor is probably still dead. Anyway, this comic is awesomely goofy. Even if this wasn't connected to Doctor Who, it'd still be a pretty silly and lighthearted adventure. I think the only problem with it then is that Professor Gamble is the one who ultimately solved everything, and even in a book that's about the two being called in to solve other people's problems, it still feels like they took a back seat to the weird sci-fi stuff. Still, we can forgive that since we have Luke Cage and Iron Fist beating up robots. Next time, it's October, which means 3 weeks of horror comics. So make sure you all get yourselves a lot of sleep. I know I will.
Saris, you didn't say there'd be a big computer console at the front door. I think our information on this place is out of date. Okay. I've got a trace. It's faint, but just try to keep their internal sensors jammed as long as possible. Okay, it's right here.
Have you been helped?
I'm just here for the magic coin.
No.
Nimbleware's sensors counteracted the jamming signal very quickly. You're not using very sophisticated equipment.
Yeah, well, shut up! Maybe I'll just take the magic coin and... I think I'll actually be going. Have a great evening.
That'll be $20.
No way. The bet was if no one tried to kill me in a year. She was not here to kill me.
Semantics.